Welcome to the Hack Music Theory Show. I'm Ray Harmony, and today we're going to be diving deeper into our exploration of how you can make rhythmically interesting and captivating songs that totally stand out from everyone else's while still using that most danceable and popular, and therefore often boring, of time signatures, 4/4. But first, T. Alright, let's get to it. Before we start though, just a heads up, this video is based on my 8/8 hack that I taught in our How to Program Interesting 4/4 Drums video. So if time signatures are a new thing for you, or if you want to learn the terminology behind this stuff, or if you just want to get the full backstory behind my 8/8 hack, please watch that video first. It's only 4 minutes long, which I thought was appropriate for a video on 4/4, and then we can crack on from there. I'll put the link down below, but on the other hand, if you're good to go right now, then let's do it, because I'll give you a quick recap before we get to the new action. The main reason why 4/4, which is 4 quarter notes in a bar, is often so boring is because the pulse never changes from the beginning of the song to the end of the song. The pulse is the heartbeat of the music. That's what you nod your head along to or tap your foot along to. And that pulse is created from the way the notes are grouped. When you group notes, the first note of each group creates a natural accent, and that accent is what we feel as the pulse or the heartbeat of the music. 4/4 is grouped in twos, and what I mean by that is each quarter note, which I'm putting on the open hi-hats here, can be divided by 2, creating eighth notes. So in other words, each quarter note is a group of 2 eighth notes. And that is why 4/4 has that predictable pulse. And this is exactly where my 8/8 hack comes in. Instead of using 4/4, which has that predictable quarter note pulse, we use 8/8, which has 8 eighth notes that we can group however we want. We can use groups of 2s and groups of 3s in any order. It's completely liberating, but it still adds up to exactly the same amount of time as 4/4. So in our other video, How to Program Interesting 4/4 Drums, what we did is we went with a 3-3-2 grouping in the first bar, and then in the second bar we went with 2-3-3, like that. So you have the first note of each group creating that pulse, which is now irregular and unpredictable, and that's what creates the captivating interest in the rhythm, because the ear is trying to figure out what's going on, which means the listener is fully engaged, not just passively nodding along to something predictable. Now, are you ready to go to the next level with this hack and literally double its coolness? Introducing, drumroll please, the 16/8 hack. The magic of 16/8 comes from grouping over that bar line, or rather where that bar line used to be in 8/8. So in other words, every second bar of 8/8, when you play that first beat of the bar with a kick drum, whatever, we've removed that accent. So we've actually taken that pulse out. So every second bar is no longer a new bar, it's merely a continuation of the first bar, which is now double the length. So by doubling the template for our rhythm, we've also doubled the longevity of the music, because it's literally going to take the listener twice as long to figure out this irregular pulse. There's numerous ways to group 16/8 notes into 2s and 3s, but for this example, let's just go with a nice simple 3-3-3-3-2-2. Okay, so now that we've decided on our 16/8 grouping, let's program the drums. So let's start by organizing the hats into that grouping. So I'm just going to delete everything other than our first group of 3, and then copy and paste that, and again. And you can see this third group of 3 here, that's where the magic is, with this group going over where the bar line used to be in 8/8. So that's what's creating the 16/8. And then we got one more group of 3, and then we're going to go into 2, and then another group of 2. So you can see that really cool irregular pulse going over the 16/8 notes. Now let's accent that by putting kicks on the 1 obviously, and then we can just alternate kick and snare. So we'll put snare on the next group, kick on the next group, snare on the next group, kick on the next group, and snare on the last group there. And then to finish off the drums, let's change the grid to 16th notes and add a little spice at the end here on the closed hi-hat, just to give us a nice little roll around back to the beginning, where we're going to add a crash on the 1, and that's the drums done. Let's have a listen. Alright, now it's time for harmony! So let's add some chords, and let's do this using a natural minor scale, also known as the Aeolian mode, which means we're only going to be using the white notes. This is what I call the white note hack. It keeps things super simple, and remember, once you're done writing, if you want, you can always just select all the MIDI and move it up or down to wherever you need. Okay, so to establish our key, let's start our chord progression on the root triad, which is A minor, and the notes are A, C, E, and we're going to hold that first chord for 3/8 notes until the next grouping of 3/8 notes, and then we're going to change to another chord, and let's change to C major, which is C, E, G, and we're going to invert that so the G is going to be at the bottom because we want to keep our common notes in the same place within the chords as they change, because that makes it super smooth. Then let's go to G major, which is G, B, and D, and once again we're going to hold that chord for 3/8 notes. Then let's go to A minor, because we've just had 2 majors in a row and we want to kind of balance it out. So let's go to D minor, which is D, F, A, and we're going to invert that as well so the F is at the bottom, so we want to keep the common note, which is D, in the same place within the chords as they change. Then the last chord, let's go back to a major to brighten things up again after that minor. So let's go to F major, so F, A, C, and because we've got 2 beats to fill here, we've got the 2 groups of 2. Let's play through that F major chord again, but in an inversion. So we go A, C, F, and the cool thing by doing that is we've got the A and the C at the bottom in the F major chord, which is exactly the same as the A and the C at the bottom of the first chord, A minor. And then you get this really cool little melodic movement of that high F coming down a semitone to the E. Semitones are cool because they're more rare than tones. And that's it, we're done with the chords. Let's have a listen. Before we move on, let's inject some extra energy and life into this chord progression by using the staccato hack. Staccato is an Italian word. It's the musical term for describing notes that are separated or detached from each other. And it creates that real bouncy vibe. It's super cool. And we can achieve this by just going and cutting all the chords, so splitting them on every 8th note. So let's just go through and split all of them. So now we have every 8th note is played. Then to create the separation, which really gives us the staccato feel, highlight everything, change the grid to 16ths, and then pull in all the chords by 1/16th. And you can see now everything is separated by a 16th rest. So you have a 16th played and a 16th rest, and that gives us that super cool bouncy momentum. So check this out. And with that, it's bass o'clock. So let's get into the low end. As always, you want to copy and paste your chords over into your bass track, because this is going to give us our template. Let me just make it a little bigger. So get the root note of each chord drawn below it. So for the first chord, we've got A, then we're going to C, then we're going to G, then we're going to D, and then we're finishing on that F. Okay, now you can delete all the chords and mute those root notes, because that's nothing more than a template. It's vital to have this template when writing a melody to a chord progression because it shows us the harmonic rhythm. The harmonic rhythm is just the rhythm of the chords, in other words, how long you stay on each chord and where it changes. This is essential to know, though, in order to keep your melody in alignment with your harmony. So for example, over this first A minor chord here, we've got the A minor lasting for 3/8 notes, and then it moves to that C major. So we need to make sure that the bass melody moves at exactly the same time after 3/8 notes to the C major. Okay, so let's write our bass melody now. We'll start with the 1, the root, which immediately locks it in, and then let's drop to the flat 7 and then go back up to the 1. So that flat 7 up to the 1, that's a real characteristic of funk music. So whenever you use a flat 7 up to a 1 in a bass line, you kind of inject a little bit of funk into it. So that's really cool. Okay, then we're on to the next chord, C major. So let's start with the root of that, which is C, so the 1. And then instead of carrying on, let's have a rest here. So we're going to create a phrase, and that's where the melody breathes. And then let's play the 7, which is B. We're going to kind of drop again from the 1, dropping down to the 7, and that's starting to create a motif, which is a short musical idea that you can repeat, and it gives your melody structure and therefore makes it memorable. And check this out, we're going to do it again here into the next chord, G major. We'll play the G, which is the root, and we'll do it for twice as long, so it's a quarter note now to change it up a little bit. And then we're going to drop to the flat 7 again. So over every chord so far, we've got that 1 down to the 7. So over the first chord, we've got the 1 down to the flat 7. Over the second chord, we've got the 1 down to the 7. And then over the third chord, we've got the 1 down to the flat 7 again. So this is a real motif, and it's going to make the melody super memorable. Okay, now we're into the D minor. So let's shoot up to the root again. So we'll do a quarter note on the root to kind of tie it into this here, the chord before. So it's going to sound kind of similar, but then instead of falling this time, we're gonna climb up to 2, and then we're gonna go all the way up to this the high point of the melody here. So this is the climax. So as soon as that F major chord hits, we go wow up to the root of F, which is our highest note of the melody. That's the climax, and then we're going to drop all the way down an octave to the low root over that F major chord, and then we're going to finish off with a 3 and a 5 to round out that F major chord, always checking the last note of your melody back around to the first note of the melody, making sure that's a nice strong melodic interval as well. And if you want some help with how to ensure your melodic intervals are strong, and a whole bunch of other hacks for how to write a great melody, then read the Ultimate Melody Checklist in my Hack Music Theory for Songwriting and Producing PDF. I'll stick the link down below. Alright, let's have a listen to our bass line. Alright, that's enough of that clean stuff. Now let's fire up our synths and get dirty. So, copy and paste your bass line over into a couple of synth tracks, and I'm going to show you this cool little hack for creating a synth line out of your bass line without actually distracting from the melody. Okay, so let's just start by cleaning this synth track up a little bit and deleting those muted root notes that we used earlier as the template for writing our bass line. We don't need those anymore, so they're gone. Then let's change the grid to 16th notes. Now this is the cool bit. Let's go through the whole bass line and chop every note into 16ths. So every 8th note becomes 2 16th notes, and then those 2 quarter notes become 4 16th notes. Okay, now what you're going to do is highlight the first of each of those notes, and in the quarter notes you can do like the first 16th and the third 16th, and then what we're going to do is move all those highlighted notes an octave higher. Okay, so we're creating this really cool ping-ponging effect between the same note, just an octave higher and octave lower. It's going to sound amazing on a synth. And then in the end here, where we're doing that FAC, the 135 over the F major, let's just change it up, and we're going to highlight the second note, the second 16th note over those, and pull them an octave higher. So you're going to get this kind of shift in that pattern of like high low. It's going to go high low high low high low like that, and then the very end is going to go low high low high. So you're going to get that syncopation, which is accenting the offbeat, right? So it's going to really kind of change things up at the end, which then brings us round to the beginning again. So really cool effect. And here's our synth line that is different, and it's going to add a real propulsion, that rhythmic propulsion, but it's not going to take away from the melody. So a really cool hack for creating a synth line out of a bass line. Just before I play, that's going to be a bit low, so I'm just going to select everything and move it all an octave higher. Okay, now we're good to go. Check this out. Okay, so now we've got a couple bass synths going. We've got this fast 16th note ping-ponging one, and then below this we've got another bass synth which is literally playing the exact same melody as the bass guitar, and together these two make up a super thick sonic texture for our low-end melody. But we want to balance this all with some lead synths on the top. So what we want to do is let's copy and paste the bass guitar melody over into a couple of lead synth tracks, and then let's open up one of these. First things first, we want to get it into the lead synth range, so let's move everything up an octave or two. Actually, that might be better. There we go. Okay, so there's already quite a lot going on here between the piano chords and the bass line and the synths we've just added. So here's a really cool hack for adding a new melody without adding any harmony. So in other words, you can actually create a new melody that's going to shine through all on its own without adding any new notes. The way we do this is we take the original melody and we essentially highlight certain segments of that melody that the ear is not used to hearing as independent segments. So in other words, what we're doing is we're creating alternative phrasing, and we're going to delete a few notes while we're at it. So let's have a look at the most obvious example, which is the first phrase of the original melody. By deleting the first two notes, we can actually trick the ear into hearing a brand new melody starting from the third note of that original melody. The other thing we want to do is not have the original rest, so we want to continue this note over that original rest, and that's actually creating the new phrase, which is going to give the illusion of the new melody. And then we're going to descend down to this G, and we're going to end the phrase there, so we can delete the rest of the original melody after that. So this is now our new phrase, and the ear has never heard these notes as one phrase before, so it's going to sound totally fresh and like a new melody, even though it's not. So it's this really cool way of creating an illusion of a new melody without actually adding any new notes. Alright, now we want to do the exact same hack for the other lead synth. So let's get that track open and start by moving everything up an octave or 2 octaves. Yeah, that's better. Alright, and then we can delete the first 2 notes, because that was the original melody that we are not using. We've already deleted that. And then the next 4 notes, that is forming the new melody in the other lead synth, so we can delete that. And this is what we've got left to work with. Alright, now let's trick the ear into hearing a brand new melody from these remaining notes. And the easiest place to start is actually to delete the last 2 notes of that melody, because those 2 notes were acting as a turnaround which took us back to the beginning. So once the ear gets on that melodic train, it's going to be carried to the original melody, which is exactly what we're trying to avoid. So we get rid of these last 2 notes, which gives the our you know, the illusion of our new melody, it gives it a different ending. And that's really important because the ear is going to hear a brand new ending while the original melody carries on underneath. Okay, and now we just need to figure out what to do with these remaining notes. So I think it's going to be really cool to start on this low F over here because it's exactly where the other lead synth stops, right here, and then we're going to pick it up where that one leaves off. And this huge interval from the F all the way up to the D, this is going to be really dramatic and it's going to sound incredible on the synth. The synth has got a bit of a slide, so it's going to be really cool. That's a no-brainer to keep that. And then we're going to go up to that high E. You know, this is climbing up towards what is the climax in the original melody, so we'll keep that. However, going up to that high F, we're not going to keep this because it's the climax in the original melody. It's going to be way too recognizable to climb up to that note in this. So as soon as we hit that high F, the ear is back to the original melody. So easy fix, let's pull it down an octave, and then we've got two Fs, two eighth note Fs next to each other, so we can just join those, so glue them together, and we've got a chord note F. So this is going to be really cool. As you can see here, like we're starting on a low F, shooting all the way up to this high D, and then we're going even higher to the E, and then the ear is expecting that high F, except it goes woof, it falls all the way down to that low F that we actually started on. And by having a long quarter note here, well, not a long quarter note, the standard length quarter note, but basically by finishing on a quarter note, it sounds longer compared to these eighth notes that we have. And it's going to be a really cool way to solidify a different ending for what our ear is going to hear as a brand new melody. So that's it, we're done. That is going to sound awesome. Let's have a listen to those two lead synths together now, so you can see the kind of question and answer vibe going on with the phrasing of the new melodies. Every song is a musical story, which you can think of as a novel or a film. So when you go to the cinema, you don't want the storyline presented in facts alone. Boy meets girl, they fall in love, boy does something wrong, girl forgives boy, and they make up and live happily ever after. That's not a story, that's just a timeline of facts. When you create a story, you set the scene, you convey emotion, you draw your listeners in, you captivate and engage your audience with an ever-changing and constantly evolving narrative. You don't just present the facts and, you know, there you go home now. That would be a 5-minute film, and it would be a half-a-minute song. Very boring half-a-minute song. So what we want to do is create this unfolding narrative through our musical story. And the way we do this is by playing around with each track as if it were a character in a film. So how does each character meet the other characters, and when? And there's some characters that don't ever meet each other, and the ones that do meet, how do they interact? What's the emotion? So this is the art of arranging, and this is how we can play around with the intensity and energy of our composition as the musical story unfolds. So we can expand things and bring more characters in, or we can whittle it down until there's just one lonely man sitting on a park bench staring out into the ocean. And then boom, surprise, and everyone's back. And you know, this is the art of arranging, and it's incredibly vital. And unfortunately, most songwriters these days don't even get to the arranging stage. You know, just throw some chords together, some melodies, hit record, and boom, you're done. So it's a real shame that arranging is kind of a lost art. So let's bring it back. And speaking of which, let's get to it right now. Alright, let's start by setting the scene, and the piano is going to be perfect for that. We just want to grab everything and move it to the right, because obviously our musical story is going to start from the left. Okay, that's the piano. Let's double click that and go into it. we want to hold something of the piano's narrative back as well, so it also has a story that can unfold. And you can see every chord here is being repeated 3 times with that staccato feel we've got, and then the F major at the end here was 4 times, so we're just playing that in 2 different positions. So there's a lot of repetition, so let's delete the middle repetition of every chord that's played 3 times. And that's going to inject a lot of space into this piano part, which means it's going to be a lot less intense. And then for the F major at the end, we can just delete every other one. And then one other trick we can do to make it a lot less intense again is pull it down an octave. So this is going to sound much calmer coming in. It's still going to have a hint of that intensity that's coming, but it's going to sound a lot calmer and a lot more spacious. Okay, then let's copy and paste that over, go into the second one. Now we need to start ramping things up for when the drums are going to come in, and so let's keep that first chord down here, but then let's actually move everything else back up an octave to where it came from. So now we're back into the proper register and we're ready to go. It's still got the space, so it's not full intensity yet, but it is getting there. Okay, and then let's actually just move this over some more, and then let's copy and paste that. So now all we need to do is move this first chord up an octave. So now we've got the kind of the less intense version. So we're going to loop that 3, and then we'll do 1 more. Okay, so this is like our intro here, and then we'll bring the drums in here, and then we've got 4 of those, and then we'll ramp up the intensity again over here for another 4. Okay, so that's the piano done, almost. I'm just going to copy this. So this is the original one we did. Full intensity piano. So now that's the piano all done. Okay, next up, to balance the unfolding story of the piano, let's go to the complete opposite extreme and let's create 100% consistency with something. So we're gonna do a track that you can rely on to just always be there, while everything else is morphing and changing, and I'm hearing that as being this bass synth down here that's playing the same as the bass guitar. So I am hearing this synth as just being absolutely rock solid all the way through, just doing its thing, not changing, and this is going to create that rock over which everything else can be like the ocean, just flowing and changing. And I think we should bring it in as early as the second loop here, so we introduce that stability really early on. Okay, then let's do the bass guitar next. I think it would be a really good thing to have the bass guitar out of the first 4, because as soon as the bass comes in, that provides that massively full low end, which the synth doesn't have, because it is kind of, it's got that dirty distortion. So the clean bass is just gonna make this whole thing sound super low. So let's save that for the more intense version, so the second half here. And then one last cool little thing with the bass, instead of just coming in boring on the one here, let's do a little run into that section. So we just open this up, and then let's get rid of everything other than the run starting from the F, and maybe let's just move that down so we can have these 2 low Fs, and then and then it's going to do that run into the intense second half over here. So that's going to be really cool. Let's clean that up. Okay, now let's do the drums. So we'll bring the drums up to start just after those 2 intro, and then we'll loop this up for 4. And then same thing here, as we kind of go up in intensity, let's let's do a little snare drum roll here. So we'll pull those quick 16th hats onto the snare, so we can have a nice little roll over there into the more intense bit. Now to create more groove and therefore more energy for this high intensity second half, let's open the drums, and we're going to do this really cool hack now. So let's start by moving all the hi-hats onto the closed, because now they're all closed hi-hats. Then let's change the grid to quarter notes, and now what we're going to do is select all the hi-hats on that quarter note pulse, and we're going to move them to open hi-hats. Okay, so now what we have is essentially a polymeter forming, because we're accenting a quarter note pulse, which means that the listeners are going to feel that 4/4 pushing its way back in, except the kicks and the snare down here are very much still in the 16/8. So we've got two totally different groupings going on at the same time, which is really going to add to the intensity. And the second half, so this bit with the quarter note pulse on the open hats, suddenly you can actually start moving to that quarter note pulse. So it's really going to add a lot of momentum to the second half. Okay, and then let's loop that up. This is going to be awesome. Okay, and then what do we have left? The other bass synth, that's going to be an easy one because it's so fast and so intense. We definitely only want that over the second half here. That will not be coming in over this beginning bit. Having said that though, let's do the same thing as we did with the bass guitar here. Let's bring it in a little early, so we'll just have a cool little run into the intense second half. So we'll just delete all that, and we're going to come in exactly the same place, so you can see right there it's just going to come in with this intense little run into that hectic bit. Finally, the lead synths. These are going to be pretty consistent because they're not playing that much, so there's already quite a lot of naturally occurring space within the melody, and the question and answer thing leaves a lot of space within each of those synths anyway. Having said that though, I wouldn't want to play through these lead synths 8 times in a row without changing anything. So every 4th time in lead synth 1, so the synth that's doing the answer in the question and answer phrasing, I think it's a real easy solution here. All we do is we lift this low F up an octave, so every 4th time that synth melody actually does reach that same climax that the other melodies are reaching, because it does kind of start to build the frustration every time we go from this D up to the E, and it's just about to reach the climax, then it drops an octave. So every 4th time we reward the listener by going to the note that they were wanting, and then we'll do the same in the 4th time here. And we are almost done. I just want to add one little drum fill to the intro to kind of roll it into where the actual drum groove starts, so it doesn't just start boom on the 1. So let's just go into this. We can just delete everything other than that that snare roll that we used halfway through, going into the more intense section here. So now we're done. It's gonna sound amazing. Are you ready? Let's have a listen. Thank you so much for watching and for joining me on this musical journey. It's been super fun and a real pleasure for me to share a little insight into my creative process. And I just want to give a big shout out to Donny McCaslin, who is a great American saxophonist, and he was actually in town last week playing at the Jazz Fest, and he did a workshop which I went to, and he was talking about different groupings he uses, and he did an example using 3-3-3-3-2-2, and I was like, that's awesome. I need to do a video on that. So thanks, Donny, and here's the video inspired by that example you did. Let's cut to that example now. Lastly, thanks big time to our patrons over on Patreon for supporting Hack Music Theory. And if you want to join our Hack Music Theory revolution and get exclusive content too, then please visit patreon.com/revolutionharmony. P.S. to our revolutionary producers over on Patreon, you can explore further and go even deeper because you have access to the multi-track MIDI file from the example in this video. So just log into Patreon and download it from there. Enjoy!